G7 summit opens with a deal to use Russian assets for Ukraine as EU's traditional powers recalibrate. EU is EU. In German, they always say EU. So diplomats confirmed that an agreement had been reached actually on the deal before the leaders even landed in southern Italy for the 3-day summit. Remember, the US President Biden has joined them there. And let me now tell you, a group of 7 summit is opening Thursday with an agreement on a US to back a 50 billion loan to Ukraine using frozen Russian assets as a collateral. Remember, giving Kyiv a strong show of support even as Europe's political chessboard shifts to the right. So diplomats confirmed that an agreement had been reached on the deal before the leaders even landed in southern Italy for the 3-day summit. Ukraine President Zelenskyy will be on hand and is expected actually to sign a separate bilateral security agreement with the US President Joe Biden. Remember, beyond the Ukraine war, Pope Francis will become the first Pope to address a G7 summit, adding a dash on celebrity and moral authority to the annual gathering that is being held this year in Italy's sun-drenched Puglia region. He will be speaking Friday about the promises and perils of artificial intelligence, but is expected to also renew his appeal for a peaceful end to wars in Ukraine and Gaza. The G7 includes actually the countries that you always know: the Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom, and the United States. Hosts this time round are Italy, has invited several African leaders, including Algerian President 𝗔𝗗𝗩𝗘𝗡𝗡𝗧𝗦, Kenyan President William Samoei Ruto, and Tunisian President Kais Saied, to press Italy's African initiatives. Other guests actually include the Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, Indian President Minister Narendra Modi, fresh of his own from his own elections, and the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Remember, with Biden, the British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, and now French President Emmanuel Macron facing elections in the coming months, pressure was on the G7 to get down what it can do while the status quo lasts. Very clever of these guys. So frozen assets to support Ukraine are going to be decided in the G7. Remember, the US proposal was involving using profits from the roughly around $260 billion in frozen Russian central bank assets, most of them held in Europe Union, to help Ukraine, and issuing a $50 billion loan from the US government to Kyiv. So using windfall profits from the immobilized funds as collateral, a French official briefing reporters Wednesday said a political decision by the leaders has been reached, but the technical and illegal details of the mechanism to tap into the assets still had to be worked out. The issue is complicated because if the Russian assets one day are unfrozen, say if it war ends, we don't know, so then the windfall's profits will no longer be able to be used to pay off the loan, requiring a burden sharing arrangement within these countries. So they have to be careful. So on the eve of the summit, Washington also sent a strong signal of support for Ukraine, with the widened actually sanctions against Russia to target Chinese companies that are helping its war machine. So Italian Premier Giorgia Meloni goes into the meeting fortified at home and abroad after her far-right party and had even stronger showing in the weekend European parliamentary elections, that 2022 election that made her Italy's first female premier. So known as for its revolving door government, Italy is now in the unusual position of being the most stable power in the EU. Let me tell you something about the G7 leaders. The leaders of the G7, 2 of the EU members, Germany and France, didn't fairly nearly as well, rattled after had right parties made strong showing in the vote. Macron called a snap election, and Germany Chancellor Olaf Scholz saw the far-right alternative for Germany beat out of his social democrats. This is your home of African music, Diaspora Chronicles. We bring you how it is, and remember, more is coming up next as we wrap up this story of the G7 summit which is opening a deal to use Russia's frozen assets for Ukraine's EU traditional powers as it is recalibrating. This is your home of African music, Gnida Richards.